Well, the NDA government took hold of the reins of the nation yesterday with the Prime Minister swearing in for his second term as Prime Minister. 57 other ministers took the oath of office and secrecy alongside him in the forecourt of Rashtrapati Bhavan. The question about who gets which portfolio in the government is yet to be answered. The first cabinet meeting for the new government will take place at 5 p.m. today. And as new faces get inducted in Modi 2.0, whether it is Amit Shah, former Foreign Secretary S. Jaishankar, CNBC-TV18 spoke to experts to get their reaction on what they make of the new cabinet, especially the inclusion of Amit Shah and S. Jaishankar. Take a look.
You know, this was speculated on in 2014 that we would actually see a right sizing of government. We would see a merger of, ministries that are actually aligned to one another. And that speculation is back again, Mr. Swaroop, this time around, that perhaps we could see a merger of some of the key infrastructure ministries. Do you really see that as a possibility, or is this just a fashionable thing to say every time you go through an election and a new government is about to take shape?
It should happen forthwith. In fact, as Coal Secretary, after 2 years, I had only 45 minutes of work. I had personally gone over to the PMO and told them, please attach this ministry to Mines Ministry. So would be the case with Steel Ministry. Why should we have three sets of ministries, steel, coal and mine, all these three interrelated, headed by three separate sets of secretaries? Yeah. It's not required. If you talk to Steel Secretary, he or she will also tell you there isn't that much of work. But if you keep a secretary there, obviously we'll try and create some trouble to sustain to justify our existence. Something really needs to be done in terms of right sizing the government. Having seen the government from very close quarters, whether HRD or here, I believe a number of ministries can actually be wound up and merged with other ministries. It should happen forthwith.
Partha, through your travels, and I think this is something that's important that we talked about, that the narrative has been that, look, a lot of these flagship schemes, whether it's Ayushman Bharat or Ujjwala or PM Kisan or Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, this is a work in progress, that we've made we've covered some milestones, but there is a lot to go, or a long journey to go and be covered as well. And that seems to have struck a chord and worked with people.
So Narendra Modi is a master in communication skills. If you look at the messages circulating through social media from the BJP's setup, it's all about being work in progress, and that should not be interrupted. He never says, I've done my job, now vote for me. He never says, I've done my job and now vote for me. It was the same. Probably they're learning from their mistake of 2004 campaign that said India shining. And Advani had later on admitted that it might have been better if the campaign slogan would have been India rising, which would have suggested a sort of a work in progress. Because whenever voters, the political parties indicate closure, voters start to look at alternatives. So Narendra Modi has been extremely clever and careful about his messaging of these schemes.
Mr. Singh, many thanks for joining us. It is now official that Mr. Jaishankar has been sworn in cabinet rank. Whether it is external affairs is the question mark still, but one would imagine or assume that because Sushma Swaraj hasn't been sworn in, that would be the obvious choice to make. Your reaction on Mr. Jaishankar being sworn into government?
Well, firstly, he's an absolutely outstanding diplomat. He's done extremely important postings in Beijing and then in Washington. He's worked closely with the Prime Minister. He obviously has Prime Minister's trust. He was working with Tatas now, so he had gone to private sector. So Prime Minister obviously wanted someone he trusts to run that ministry, because in the second term, this is a legacy-defining term for him at a time when the tension between US and China, when the relationship with Pakistan, when the power shift from Europe to Asia, all this is happening. India is at a very, very important inflection point. And it is not without precedent. A number of major powers, the Chinese, at least the last 2-3 foreign ministers, have all been former diplomats. Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, is a former diplomat. The Brazilians have had former diplomats become their foreign ministers, because many major countries treat this job not as that for a retired or a very senior politician to satisfy the need of giving a major post to someone. They feel that this is really a technical position in that sense. Like you get an economist to be in the finance ministry. You get someone who's already aware of all the trends, who knows how the international diplomacy works.
Mr. Mariwala, thanks very much. The swearing-in ceremony continues. Amit Shah, sir, and he's been sworn in, and the buzz continues that he is likely to be India's next finance minister. Your thoughts?
You're right. I also believe that he'll be the finance minister. If you look at the new faces which have come in, and we were sitting in the first row, the two new faces are Amit Shah and Shiv Shankar.
Yeah.
And I mean, they are filling in vacancies caused by Arun Jaitley and Sushma Swaraj. So it looks like a vote for or a formation of cabinet based on continuity. And I think my guess is that most of the portfolios which the earlier ministers were handling, they will continue. And these two new faces, Amit will take over as finance minister, and Jai Shankar will take over as the external affairs minister.
The assumption is that, from a speed of execution perspective, maybe Mr. Shah will be able to deliver much faster and much swifter. How would you read this development? What do the markets and investors make of it?
Yeah, I think there are two things. One is his thoughts in terms of conceptualizing the finance portfolio and what he wants to do. I think on that, nobody knows because it's not public. The other is the execution part, whatever decisions are taken are executed. I think he's shown very good execution capabilities, at least on the political front, on the elections front. So I reckon that he is a very good executor. But in terms of his thinking and strategy, in terms of what he wants to do, is unknown. So I'm not able to comment on that.
All right, my colleague Rituparna Bhuyan also spoke to Bharat Forge MD Baba Kalyani, who was a part of the India Inc. invited to a swearing-in ceremony of the Modi government, and began by asking him about his take on the Prime Minister's Council of Ministers.
I think I have to congratulate Prime Minister Narendra Modi for the second term and for the choices that he has made in the Council of Ministers. I think you see a lot of leadership, experience, diversity, inclusion, and I think it's good for India. That's what India needs, and I believe personally that the first 5 years the Prime Minister has laid the road for India's growth, has brought in a lot of reforms, and I think we should now start seeing the acceleration for India to take its rightful place in the global economy under his leadership.
You had said that dealing tax incentives with exports and bring in concepts like linkage with investment, linkage with employment. Can you tell us more about what was the idea behind it, and should those recommendations be taken forward as far as special economic zones are concerned?
I think, it's very clear what India needs. We need to see economic growth. We need to see jobs. We need to see more and more technology coming in. We need to see more and more investments coming in. So the more restrictions you take away and create a level playing field for everybody to come in, the more of this you will see. And that's what everybody in the world is doing. So it's nothing very special that was recommended. We have to wait and see what happens.
What, according to you, will be needed, especially to ensure better access to credit and availability of liquidity as far as corporate India is concerned?
I have honestly not felt that there is a squeeze in credit. Yeah, we have obviously an issue that's going on in the banking system that's getting addressed. But, businesses that are doing well get credit. There is no problem to get. I've never faced a problem to get credit. And I think there is a lot of schemes that the government has put in the last few years. Mudra is one of the schemes for MSMEs to get credit. There are lots of other schemes. There is microfinancing available. A lot of schemes at the state level for the rural economy. I think the important thing is, we can't get hung up on the old model of the economy. There is a lot of potential even in our agro sector. There's a lot of potential in the rural economy.
What, according to you, is the need of the hour as far as the defense industry is concerned?
I think all the policies are in place. There is an entire policy on defense procurement. There's a policy on defense production. Everything is in place. At the end of the day, every country, as large as ours, you need your own local defense industry. And I think that's the direction we are moving in. And as that starts moving in, foreign investments will come, technology will come where we have gaps, and things will start happening. So I don't see any big policy requirements. I think they are all pretty much in place.
All right, that's the word coming in from Baba Kalyani. And now that we have the Modi cabinet in place and the first cabinet meeting is at 5 p.m. today, we still have to get clarity on who is getting which portfolio. Shireen Bhan joins in with more details on that. Hi Shireen, good morning.
Good morning. Well, yes, the wait and the suspense continues, and I believe that it is probably going to take another few hours before we do know about the portfolio allocation. But let me just wrap up, what was a breathtaking ceremony at Rashtrapati Bhavan last night. The key headlines to my mind is that Mr. Modi has decided to go in for continuity with Modi 2.0. So a lot of old faces made their way back to Rashtrapati Bhavan to be sworn in to the Council of Ministers. What was notable, and I think the key headline there, is Amit Shah's induction into the Council of Ministers. Speculation continues on whether it will be finance that Mr. Shah will be given or it will be home. But it has to be, one of the four top portfolios. It really boils down to finance or home for Mr. Amit Shah. The second headline was the inclusion of S. Jaishankar, the former Foreign Secretary. Now, again, one would imagine that the obvious choice is that Sushma Swaraj was not sworn in because of her poor health, and hence Mr. Jaishankar will take over from Sushma Swaraj. Remember, he was sworn in with a cabinet rank. But if you look at the track record of Prime Minister Modi, then whenever he's brought in a bureaucrat, a former bureaucrat, he hasn't placed them in their area necessarily of expertise. So if we look at, for instance, Hardeep Puri, who was also sworn in yesterday, now, his experience as a bureaucrat has been in foreign affairs, but Hardeep Puri was placed in the Urban Development Ministry. So I wouldn't be 100% certain that with the induction of S. Jaishankar, he will be made the Minister for External Affairs. There is buzz that he could even look at possibly the Defence Ministry. And I would imagine that commerce is also going to be something to consider because remember, Suresh Prabhu, who held the dual charge of commerce and civil aviation, has not been sworn in. So civil aviation and commerce are both open. And Mr. Jaishankar, given his expertise and given the fact that we're in an era where the trade tensions are escalating and you need to negotiate your way through this new global economy, he may be a choice for the commerce portfolio as well. But this is still in the realm of speculation. You are going to see a completely new team at the Aviation Ministry because even the Minister of State for Civil Aviation, Jayant Sinha, was not sworn in. Some of the other exclusions, Radyavardhan Rathore, the Telecom Minister Manoj Sinha, Uma Bharti, these were people who were not sworn in last night. So you will see new faces coming in to some of these ministries. Some of the other notable inclusions, of course, Smriti Irani making her way back into the Council of Ministers, Piyush Goyal coming back into the Council of Ministers, Ravi Shankar Prasad, Dharmendra Pradhan. These are the sort of old Modi Council of Ministers who are now part of Modi 2.0. There is a cabinet meeting later this evening at about 5 p.m. This will be the first meeting of the cabinet after taking oath. So, there will be lots of interesting developments to watch out for today. The morning will be spent by the Prime Minister in inking some bilaterals. Remember the BIMSTEC leaders who are here for the swearing-in ceremony. The Prime Minister will be hosting some bilaterals with them. But for now, the wait and the suspense continues on who gets which portfolio.
Absolutely, Shireen. The suspense and wait continues. Stay tuned to CNBC-TV18 for getting more updates on that.